Chiefs kingdom. Hold on a second, because this one got real interesting, real fast. I'm Victor, and I've got to be honest. When I saw Kansas City's name connected to not one, but two explosive wide receivers in trade chatter, I sat up in my chair. After a 6-11 season, after all the questions about this offense, suddenly we're being linked to Jordan Addison, and now there's an actual trade package idea floating around for George Pickens. That's not minor tweaking. That's potential offensive transformation. On one side, you've got a young electric playmaker who might be available for the right price. On the other, a legit game-breaking receiver who just put up monster numbers and could give Mahomes the kind of target we haven't truly had since Tyreek left. If even one of these moves happens, this offense looks completely different overnight. Before we break this down, if you're rocking with Chiefs content and you want real talk like this every week, help us hit 1,600 subscribers. We're building this community the right way. All right, let's talk about what this actually means for Kansas City. So Bleacher Report threw Kansas City into the Jordan Addison trade conversation. Not as a done deal, not as something imminent, but as a logical call and ask team. And honestly, that makes sense. Addison is 24 years old, electric, explosive, under contract for 2 more seasons on a rookie deal. And here's the part that matters. His cap hit would only be about $2.6 million this year. For a team that needs to add talent without blowing up the books, that's attractive. But it's not that simple. The reason Minnesota is even being mentioned in trade chatter is because of the off-field issues. He's had multiple legal incidents since entering the league. One of the more recent charges was dropped. But the pattern is what makes front offices nervous. And when you combine that with the fact that he's never topped 920 receiving yards in a season, you start to see why his trade value isn't sky high. Now here's where I put my fan hat on. The Chiefs went 6-11 last season. That's not just a down year, that's a wake-up call. The offense ranked 11th in EPA per play, which sounds fine on paper, but we all watched the games. It didn't feel dynamic. It didn't feel scary. It didn't feel like the kind of unit that strikes fear into the AFC. Since trading Tyreek Hill, the wide receiver room has been a work in progress. Rashee Rice has shown flashes, Xavier Worthy has elite speed. There's potential there, but there hasn't been that consistent second-level difference maker who can tilt coverage week after week. That's where Addison becomes intriguing. If you imagine a 2026 receiver room of Rashee Rice, Jordan Addison, Xavier Worthy, and the rest of that young depth group, suddenly you've got versatility. Route running, separation, speed. Addison is the type of player who can operate at every level of the field. He can be a WR1 if given the chance. And with a healthy Patrick Mahomes back, that's dangerous. Now let's talk cost. Reports suggest Minnesota would likely want at least a second-round pick to even start conversations. They're not giving him away. Even with the legal concerns, he's still talented, still young, and still cheap on the cap. You're not paying a first-rounder because the production hasn't justified it, and the off-field questions bring risk. But a second-rounder? That's realistic. And here's the balancing act. Are you willing to take on that off-field risk for that kind of upside? Because let's be honest, Kansas City has historically taken calculated swings on talent, and Brett Veach is known for finding value where others hesitate. Addison wouldn't require a long-term commitment immediately. You'd get to evaluate him in your system, see how he meshes with Mahomes, see how he handles the culture. That's the kind of move that doesn't cripple your future but could elevate your present. But there's another layer to this. The Chiefs own the 9th pick in the draft. Most mock drafts project them going defense or possibly running back. If you trade for Addison, that gives you more freedom. You're not forced to reach for a receiver. You can reinforce other areas and let the offense develop naturally. This feels like a low-risk, high-reward conversation. Not a blockbuster, not a franchise-altering gamble, but a smart call to make if the price is right. And here's what really stands out to me. Minnesota doesn't have to trade him. They still have control. They could pick up his 5th-year option. They could decide the talent outweighs the trouble. So this only happens if the Chiefs are aggressive and if the Vikings are motivated. But Chiefs Kingdom, let me ask you something. If you can add a 24-year-old explosive receiver for a second-round pick and a manageable cap hit, and you believe your locker room culture can stabilize him, do you make that call? Because that's one path. And then there's another name floating around that's way louder, way riskier, and way more dramatic. If Addison is the calculated swing, the other option being discussed might be the all-in move. Now let's talk about the move that would shake the entire AFC. Because while Jordan Addison feels like a calculated bet, the George Pickens idea? That's a power play. So here's what's out there. There's growing speculation that the Cowboys plan to franchise tag George Pickens. That would lock him in for 1 year at around $29 million. On the surface, that's solid money, but it's not long-term security. And when you're a receiver coming off 93 catches, 1,429 yards, and 9 touchdowns, career highs across the board, you probably want more than a 1-year rental. That's where things get interesting. If Dallas doesn't want to commit long-term, and Pickens wants stability, the trade market opens, and Kansas City has been floated as a team that could make sense. Now let's be honest as fans, when you hear game-breaking receiver connected to Patrick Mahomes, your heart rate goes up a little bit, because since Tyreek Hill left, we've been trying to recreate that fear factor. Rashee Rice has flashed. Xavier Worthy has blazing speed. We all saw that 4.21 at the Combine, but the deep ball chemistry hasn't fully clicked yet. And Marquise Brown is heading into free agency. The offense hasn't had that "you can't guard this guy" presence consistently. Pickens might be that guy. He's 6'3", about 200 pounds, and he thrives on those 50-50 balls. Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer literally said he's almost impossible to cover on those contested throws. Even when he doesn't come down with it, he draws pass interference. He flips field position. He stresses safeties. Now here's the proposed trade package that's floating around. Kansas City sends Xavier Worthy, a 2027 first-round pick, and a 2026 third-round pick to Dallas. In return, the Chiefs get George Pickens. That's not subtle. That's not safe. That's aggressive. You're talking about giving up a former first-round speedster and premium draft capital. That's real cost. That's a move that says, we're done playing it cautious. As a fan, I've got mixed emotions, and I think that's fair. On one hand, you don't give up first-rounders lightly. This team is in transition mode after a 6-11 season. You need depth. You need youth. You need cost-controlled talent. On the other hand, this is Patrick Mahomes. When you have the best quarterback in the league, sometimes you don't hoard picks. Sometimes you maximize the window, and if you put Pickens on the outside with Rashee Rice working underneath and the rest of that group stretching the field, defenses can't just sit back anymore. And here's the cultural question. Pickens has had baggage. He was traded from Pittsburgh because of headaches. But in Dallas, by most accounts, he wasn't nearly the distraction people feared. If you believe in Andy Reid's locker room, if you believe in Mahomes' leadership, you might think this is the right environment to harness that fire instead of letting it burn out of control. This move would not be about patience. It would be about urgency. And that's what stands out to me when you connect both stories. With Addison, you're looking at a smart, affordable swing. A second-round pick, low cap hit, manageable risk. You're betting on upside and structure. With Pickens, you're pushing chips to the middle of the table. Both conversations tell you something very clear. The Chiefs are not comfortable with where the wide receiver room currently stands. After finishing 6-11, after watching the offense stall at critical moments, after seeing the AFC pass you by for the first time in years, this front office is evaluating bold options. And here's my honest take. If you can get Addison for a second-round pick, that's a smart move. It strengthens the room without mortgaging the future. If you land Pickens without completely gutting your draft capital, that's transformative. But if the price is Worthy plus a first and more, that's where it gets scary. Because this isn't just about adding talent, it's about balance. It's about whether you're building sustainable success or chasing a quick rebound. Together, these two stories don't feel random. They feel intentional. They feel like a front office that understands this team cannot afford another mediocre season. This isn't minor tweaking. This is a crossroads. And Chiefs Kingdom? Crossroads seasons define dynasties. The question isn't whether change is coming. The question is, how bold Kansas City is willing to be. So when you zoom out and look at everything together, this isn't just off-season noise. This is a franchise that knows it just went 6-11. A franchise that felt what it's like to watch January football from the couch. And now, instead of pretending everything is fine, they're being connected to bold offensive moves. Jordan Addison represents calculated improvement. Young, affordable, talented, with some risk but manageable cost. George Pickens represents aggression, a swing that tells the league, we are not staying down. Together, these rumors reveal something important about this moment in Kansas City. This team is not satisfied, and they shouldn't be. As a fan, I feel a mix of hope and urgency. Hope, because it sounds like Brett Veach is exploring ways to give Patrick Mahomes real weapons again. Urgency because we can't waste prime years waiting for things to magically click. Chiefs Kingdom, this offseason feels decisive. Not reactive, decisive. Now, I want to hear from you. If you had to choose, Are you making the safe move for Addison? Or are you pushing the chips in for Pickens? Drop it in the comments. Let's debate it the right way. If you're enjoying this kind of breakdown and real fan perspective, hit that like button and subscribe. We're building this channel together, and we're pushing toward 1,600 subscribers. Every single one of you makes this community stronger. I'm Victor, and no matter how bold the move is, we ride with Kansas City. Always.